So I'd like to walk you guys through that tonight. Oh, sorry. There we go. So, hi, I'm Dakota. I'm an effects artist, and yeah, I got to do some effects work for Bad Guys 2. Oh, shucks. Thanks, guys. So tonight, I want to kind of talk to you about some soup, smoke, and sprites. But kind of more generally speaking, I want to illustrate some of the design and technical processes that we use to make these effects happen. And so to get us started, I would like to show you some soup. So I'm going to deconstruct a couple of these smaller, like one-off shots, just to kind of show you like what our thought process was while we were making them. And so this little soup pour is pretty cool, pretty graphic. And yeah, let's break it down. Okay, great. So we start off with our soup mesh, and this is really nothing super special, nothing really to write home about, maybe a little bit blobby than some other fluids might be, but it starts to get a little bit more interesting pretty quickly when we start to add some of this color and shading information. And this is using a technique very similar to what Yori showed us with the dust, where we'd pick a point in space, we'd call that our light source and direction, and then we'd use this to sort of derive some areas of highlight, shadows, and midtones. So you can see in here, we have some shadows inside of the can of the soup, we have a core shadow on the side of the soup, and some midtones overall. And that's pretty cool, but we can push it further, which is where this little guy comes in. This little animated squiggle doesn't really look like much on its own, but when you slap it on top of our soup, it becomes this cute little anime graphic highlight. And this is kind of the crux of why I wanted to bring this in front of you today. Because normally highlights are something that, we take for granted. Our render engine takes care of this. But throughout Bad Guys, in a lot of cases, the shading and the lighting, shading, I say in quotations, and lighting, were very tightly wound with the effects design process. So much to the point where even something like our highlights were an effects element. So that's pretty cool. That's really the big picture stuff that I wanted to show, but just to kind of wrap this up, a little extra spice thrown in there at the end was utilizing a very similar technique that we saw Yori use, which is where I just kind of drew in these little drips in camera space and then reprojected them back into 3D space. And sort of, when you put them all together, the common theme with effects is, utilizing our 3D as much as we can, but also, sprucing it up with some custom 2D animated stuff. So, okay. Cool. So sorry. So we finished that up and we pass it off to the lovely people in the lighting department, and they integrate it for us. They make it match and look cohesive with the rest of the shot, and overall just make it look really pretty. Okay, sweet. So next, I would like to walk us through this campfire effect. All of the campfire shots that you see in the movie were done by the incredibly talented Matt Head. But I was really fortunate in that I got to work on and develop the setup for this before production even started. So I'd like to walk you guys through that tonight. Oh, sorry. There we go. So the first sort of step, so our head of effects, Steve Wood, he's an effects legend, but more importantly, a 2D effects legend on top of that. His whole philosophy when approaching these effects, particularly the ones that had to be 2D hand-drawn, was that he was really interested in getting the design down first, static with no motion. So what you're looking at behind me is an example of like what Yori was showing, an example of one of those design sheets that our resident 2D effects artist, Olivier, put together for Steve and put in front of him for approval. So yeah, really, really, really cool. So he would get the design approved, and then Olivier would go in and animate the rest of the 2D sequence. And Yeah, sorry about the the dithering that you guys see here on campus. That's the GIF. But yeah, I mean this is gorgeous, right? He's just such a killer artist. Yeah, I could watch it for hours, and I have watched it for hours. But yeah, so once this comes into our laps, our first job is to convert this 2D image sequence into 3D geometry and put it into 3D space. So yeah, this is a little example of it. So you can see we're converting it to geometry, separating it up into its different layers, and then putting it in 3D space so that it lines up with the props that it's supposed to. In this case, it's the campfire. And this effect is beautiful on its own. It stands very well, and yeah, again, gorgeous work by Olivier, yeah. But we can always do more to add to it, and that's kind of our job in effects to continue pushing these. So the first way to sort of plus this up, I decided, yeah, we'll just go ahead and put some embers in there. So this was a base of some simulated embers in here. Nothing super crazy or fancy. But one thing that I want to point out, if you're a 3D artist and you've ever done any sort of fire or fluid shot like this, then you'll know that a really good way to get really nice looking ember motion when you're working on embers and fire is to simply take the velocity field from your fluid simulation and move the particles around with that velocity field, because immediately it'll get you 90% of the way there. It'll match pretty closely the movement of the underlying simulation, and it'll look cool. Unfortunately, though, we were working with Olivier's beautiful 2D sprites that did not come with a velocity field. So what you're kind of watching behind me is sort of the process of building that velocity field from scratch, and just showing you kind of the shaping that I had in mind while putting it together. Again, this is nothing super special or fancy. Every effects artist does this at one point or another. But yeah, I just wanted to show you that cool little, the little, it isn't really a problem, but obstacle that we had to overcome when working on something like this. Before I move on, just to give a little bit of context for where this effect lives in the movie, it's in this sequence of shots where some of the main characters are sitting around the fire. They're kind of bantering. Doom and Snake are kind of flirting. So there's a little bit of a playfulness, a little bit of playful tension in there. So sort of as I was working on this and plussing up the effects, I was kind of thinking about what are some ways that we could make this more playful, stuff like that. And so the first thing that I sort of started to implement for this was these custom-made 2D Ember sprites. And so, yeah, you can watch sort of their creation process behind me. But I started by modeling some pretty basic Ember shapes. And then I took a look at a lot of Olivier's work to see ways that he was dissipating his effects and stuff like that. And so I sort of tried to implement some of those principles of erosion and asymmetry in motion when making these sprites. Of course, they're pretty small, so but yeah, so once these were finished, I think I made about 2 or 3 different variations of them. I popped them. I cherry-picked a few of the simulation embers that I showed you earlier, and I instanced these animated sprites onto them. And yeah, I don't know. I think it adds a fun little pop, 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 pop. It's kind of cool. But again, we can always push it further, and we can never have enough custom animation. So that's where these guys come in. These are some hero animated embers, and sort of the idea behind these were to create some embers that maybe mimic the log settling and the fire crackling and pew, shoot little guys out of there. But of course, make it fun and playful and stuff like that. So yeah, my sort of process for this was modeling out these curves that would end up being my motion curves, and then creating a procedural animation system to have these embers travel along it and stretch in areas where they move faster and then shrink and stuff like that when they get slower. Yeah, so then we put them all together. Yeah, I don't know. Obviously, this thing is carried by thank you so much. This is carried by the beautiful 2D animation that Olivier did, but I think the embers are pretty cool too. But of course, there's a big aspect of this that we haven't covered, and that is the smoke. So let's talk about it. When starting designing the smoke, obviously I stood on the shoulders of giants because there was some really gorgeous graphic smoke in the first film. So I pulled a couple of those together as reference. I was looking at what they did before, what was like really working about them, making them so appealing. And then I also took a look at some model sheets for some similar effects in different parts of the movie. So that's what the hot dog steam is. So I took those, put them in the back of my mind for reference, and then also we had these, from the first film, there were these style guides that were made for basically like guidelines for different scales of smoke. This one only shows the small scale stuff. But yeah, it was kind of like do's and don'ts of what we want to see and what we don't want to see in the smoke effect, and particularly with the shapes at the different scales. So here, you know, it's pretty bulbous, exaggerated bulbous shapes with like the tight pinching between it, which is pretty cool. When I was starting to put this together, you know, synthesizing all of that really awesome reference, I also kept in the back of my mind the philosophy of our head of effects, which was, you know, design first and then, you know, motion second. And obviously, in my case, it was kind of difficult to keep them separate forever. But I tried my best to isolate areas of shaping and areas of motion. And then when it did come to applying motion, applying it in layers. So that way I had complete control of pretty much every aspect of it. So this first little GIF you're seeing here is just sort of like the starting of the shaping of the smoke. So I knew that we needed some sort of like knuckly shapes, bulbous knuckly shapes. So I started with just like a little bump that, you know, went skinny between the two of them, arrayed that, repeated the pattern and mirrored it, offset it, and that was kind of the starting point for my shaping. At the same time, I also started building in the different layers of motion. You know, smoke rises, so obviously we're going to need some sort of upwards motion. So that was obviously the easiest one to take care of first. Another layer of motion that I added in there, and I'm pretty fond of this one, is and it might be hard to see. Oh, we can kind of see it. Is like some like evolving like curl twist that happens in between the knuckles of the smoke. And I'm pretty fond of this because not only did it sort of accentuate the bulbous shapes and like the skinny like areas between them, but also created some cool asymmetry and gave it a little bit more of that like evolving curly motion that you might see in similar you know, simulated effects, but of course simplified and stylized quite a bit. After that, you know, started building some of the other larger scale motion. In this case, you can see from the sinusoidal, sorry if I butchered that word, line to get some of the left and right movement in there. Yeah, pretty clear what I'm trying to go for there. And then, yeah, so at this point, all my different animation layers and base of shaping, put them all together, and I get this. And it's a little bit of a mess at this stage, but some things are working pretty well. For example, some things that make it like uniquely a campfire smoke are like the how it sort of collapses upon itself as it goes up, some variation of speed from when it leaves versus to like when it gets closer to the top, and also again those bulbous asymmetrical shapes. So from here, we do a cleanup pass, kind of smooth out some of the errors, issues, and of course we give it some solid fill so that way we have something that we can render. And then, yeah, so the idea after this is we take a couple of these. It's very easy to replicate. The system was very controllable and procedural. So we make a couple of different variations of these that we like and layer them on top of each other and give them a little bit of comp love. So we bring them into compositing where we adjust the opacity, the hardness of them, the gradation, or like the fade of, you know, when they start, when they end, and then also integrate it into the lighting in the shot. So yeah, put that all together and you get this, and I think it's pretty cool. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, so that's all I have. Thank you again all so much for listening. And I just want to say really fast, like this was like super surreal. I remember when I graduated 3 years ago, the first Bad Guys film was coming out, and I remember watching it, and like my mind was just blown. I was like, oh my gosh, how did they do that? And then I got an opportunity to work on it, and it's like, oh my gosh, how did you guys do that? So this is like the best crew in the world. They're awesome, so thank you.